This year we're growing more food than ever here on River Bend, so join me on this drizzly late spring day here in North Idaho for a tour of the different gardens. Here we are in the Terrace garden. Now, this is a garden that's pretty new to our space. This is the second full year that we're going to be using it. It's become an important part of the kitchen garden. We use this row right here as our succession row for our greens for planting. So every couple of weeks we plant some new lettuces, some stir-fry mixes, chard, cilantro, things like that we want to succession collect throughout the year. This is something that is really important. This feeds us a huge amount of the year, including in the spring when the main crop things are not growing yet or they're not harvestable yet, and in the fall after we've had our first frost. Now right here I have my overwintered kale bed. This kale we harvested last fall, but then I went ahead and let it overwinter. And in the very early spring, once the heavy snows were done, I popped a cold frame right over the top of it and it started to grow back in. We've been harvesting from this for quite a while now. So it's a great way to get some really early spring vegetables. Now here in the terrace garden, I also grow things like summer squash, some perennial herbs, and sometimes some quick grab tomatoes for salads, fresh salads in the middle of summer. This is right outside the kitchen door. So this is a great place to have a lot of quick grab stuff for cooking during the year. Most of those things are not planted yet because it's still way too early. We're still getting frosts and even occasionally still getting freezes. So those will come in a little bit later. Let's go check out the cottage garden. Here we are in my cottage garden. Now I absolutely love this space to put in some kitchen fresh eating vegetables, different herbs like culinary herbs, and a whole bunch of medicinal herbs. But another thing that I really love about this garden is my collection of different perennial greens. Now I can barely be getting cold weather spring greens into the garden right now. You just saw them in the terrace bed. They're just babies. But take a look at this good King Henry. This just comes back first thing in the spring every single year, year after year. It's not a great texture for raw eating, but it makes for a great spinach substitute. Same thing, the lovage up here just pops up every single year in the early spring. It's great to use as celery. As it gets older, we like to dry it for seasoning for when we don't have fresh celery on hand because it really tastes like celery. We also have the Caucasian spinach right over here, and same thing, it's up early in the spring, long before I can plant other things, ready to eat and use in places like a spinach or a chard. The flavor's great, really, really good. The other one that I really like is my sorrel. Now, I love sorrel, and the kids love sorrel because it's so sour. It's a very lemony. It's also called lemon spinach, but the same thing. It comes up all on its own super early in the spring, comes back year after year, and is ready to eat really early. So I really recommend you get some of these perennial greens into your garden if you don't have them already. I've also in this area planted in early cabbages, broccolis, kohlrabi, and some kale so that they'll be ready earlier than most other things. This area over here is where I have my culinary herbs mixed with some flowers and medicinals. I have a lot of hollyhocks mixed in here. Those are completely medicinally interchangeable for marshmallow, and every part of the hollyhock is totally edible. So not only does it make a great early spring green, but it also serves as a great medicine, and then it's just pretty. I really like them. I save a little bit of room here for my annual herbs like basil. They're not in yet. You can see my French tarragon's already coming up. My winter savory didn't make it through the winter. It's always made it through the winter, but this year I'm gonna have to replace it with something new. Another favorite herb of mine is hyssop. It's great as a culinary herb. It's also really good as a medicinal herb, especially for digestive issues. So I like to have that on hand. It's really interesting when you go back in the history books how often herbs that are used for digestion are also used as a culinary seasoning. There's a reason for that. They work really well together. This area, the cottage garden, is one of my favorites because this is where I grow a lot of my medicinal herbs. This year I'm adding some additional fun herbs to my medicinal collection. One of them is red valerian. Another one is Echinacea angustifolia. I have a great collection of the Echinacea purpurea, but I wanted the angustifolia too. I'm also growing clematis mixed in with the hops to be able to grow up and add some beautiful pops of color to the wall of green that the hops become. The hops are starting to grow really fast right now, so I need to get them strong so that they go up and not out into the garden. Those of you guys who have been following for a while will see that I finally got my new furniture out in here. After my favorite cafe table got crushed under the weight of the snow this winter, I decided to go a little bit of a different direction and go with a lower set that I could enjoy and sit on a little more relaxed, so I'm really happy with it. Let's take a look at some of the other medicinal herbs that I have in here. I have my wood betony over here. I absolutely love this herb. It's a great herb to have medicinally for colds and flus and things like that. It's also just a beautiful little flower. Comes back every year. I've got my lady's mantle, some bee balm, some regular white valerian, and look at all of this elecampane. The elecampane just wants to take over the whole garden. It's beautiful. It looks like a big sunflower, but it does spread really quickly, so you need to be aware of that. Now over here I have all sorts of other fun herbs mixed in, from echinacea to more valerian, feverfew. Let's see, we've got catnip, Korean hyssop, yarrow, and even my little elderberry tree that's growing back here. So this is just a fun space. I love getting to mix in flowers and the different colors and the smells. I'm always looking to make sure I've got a great mix for the pollinators and also for just enjoying, for being really pretty. So this is one of my favorite spots. We don't grow a lot of food in this spot, but we do grow most of the family's medicine right here. Here I am in the front bed. Now this bed is right off the driveway, so it gets a lot of heat from the driveway really early on in the spring. It's also totally south facing and has the hillside right behind it, so it's really a great spot for this early spring stuff. So we have our rhubarb here and a bunch of strawberries between the rhubarb. Strawberries are already setting fruit, so it's really exciting to think that we're going to be eating fresh strawberries really, really soon. Now, this is definitely not a food growing spot, but this spot makes me so happy that I wanted to share it with you guys anyways. And this is my new bulb bed. I just love the flowers. They were blooming before anything else was doing anything this spring, and they just brought us all so much joy. Every time we'd walk by here, it's still a little early for the pollinators, so they're not even getting to eat on this very much in this really cool spring we're having. But in later years, when it warms up a little bit faster, they're gonna really appreciate having these flowers out first thing in the spring. Those were the fun areas, but where do we grow most of our food? Well, that happens up in the main crop garden, which is up here behind the house. So let's go take a look. Here we are in the main crop garden, and this early in the year, there is actually not a lot out here. We've got the garlic that we put in last fall, garlic and shallots, and those are doing really well getting started. We'll probably harvest those somewhere around the end of July. We have our bean tunnel right here. Right now, the only thing we have in here are the peas. Those are starting to come up really well. We actually have a few little broccolis and cabbages that are seeded. I'm starting to see them poke up too. So it's exciting to see. This is gonna be a lot of peas, a lot of green beans, and a lot of broccoli and cabbages. Now, we like to grow the broccoli and the cabbage underneath the bean and the pea tunnel. We find that it really deters one of our biggest pests. Our biggest pest up here is flea beetles, and they don't like it when things are growing in the shade. So if we can grow the broccoli and the cabbages underneath the shade of the green beans, they seem to get left alone by the flea beetles for the most part. Here we are at our homemade DIY hoop house. This thing works so well. You can check out the video on how to make one just like this right up here. Let's go check out what's in there. It has got to be 15 degrees warmer in here, maybe even 20 degrees than it is outside. And this is where we grow our tomatoes, our bell peppers, and our cucumbers, along with the occasional okra plant thrown in here. Now, some of the tomatoes just got put out here just within the last day or two, so they're getting going. They're getting ready to take off and start growing. These are our sauce tomatoes. So we've got a really good selection of great sauce tomatoes. Now we're gonna put some fresh eating tomatoes over here within the next few days, and the cucumbers and the bell peppers. And then we'll be ready to grow through a iffy Idaho summer where we don't know how much heat we're actually gonna get. This is gonna help us to get tomatoes even if we have a really cool summer, which does happen up here. Here's the rest of the main crop garden, and most of the rest of this is not yet planted. We're probably gonna plant almost all of it this weekend. This is the place that we put in root crops. You can see there's already onions planted in here. We'll have potatoes in here, beets, parsnips, and carrots. This is also the place where we're gonna grow some winter squash and anything else that we need to get into the garden. This amount of space between all the different areas that you've seen feeds our family of 12 people 3 meals a day, a majority of our food. So we can grow most of the food we need in this kind of space. You guys, I really want to encourage you. You don't need huge spaces to start growing. You can grow in a tiny little spot right in your backyard. And if you want to get started, it's not too late to start this year. You can put in a garden. Check out this video right here where Josh shows you how to start an instant garden. Do it right away. You can get growing within the week. We'll see you soon.